Grace and peace to all of you resonating lights joining us on our journey deeper into spiritual truth, mythological understanding, and the significance of remembering who we are. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing our streamcast. We want to reach as many hearts and minds that are open to receive truth as we can. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for all of you that are joining us here in person. We were talking Wednesday and we got into a pretty good discussion. Discussion about play and sacrifice and how those concepts seem irreconcilable, but the opposite is actually true. I would like to start out today by saying I have a correction from Wednesday night. I gave, sorry Abraham, this is my bad. I gave him a little too much credit. I gave him a little too much virility in his old age. He did not have a baker's dozen worth of children. Though there have been those that have. Abraham wasn't one of them. He had 8 total children. He had Ishmael with Hagar, who, Hagar, let's go ahead and put this baby to bed, is a moniker. It's not her name. It's what Sarah called her handmaiden. It's how Sarah saw her with her physical sight, because she still was not operating in the faith to have the vision of who that woman was, a real woman of faith, in her camp as her handmaiden. She couldn't see it. Her world was colored by her thoughts, and her thoughts were not on the faith of God. Her name would be Keturah. We would learn that later on. And after Sarah's passing, Abraham would go and wed her, and not only have Ishmael with her, but have 6 additional children with her. So Abraham, and that's sons, Abraham had 8, not a baker's dozen. I was 5 off the base. So I think that's it for errors and omissions. In the comment stream, if there are more, please let us know, and we'll follow up on those to make sure that we're rightly dividing the words of truth. Dare I fall short of doing that on our mission to do that for all of you. Today's message, though, is we got into a wonderful passage of Scripture that Michael had brought out in Proverbs chapter 8. And what we began to discuss, and what was somewhat of a revelation, a working revelation at the time that we were working through in conversation for all of you, was that God created us as a compass in this world, over the face of the deep. Today's message would be titled, Wisdom's Compass. Fool's gold or foal's gold? If you've been listening to AJ as he's delivered his messages on philosophy, which I'll define for you today, you'll understand exactly where we're going. It's the same place we've been going for the last run of messages and the last little bit of ministry we've all been involved in, remembering our true identity, who we really are within, retreating within to strengthen that being, to overcome and have dominion over this body, over this human nature. And on Wednesday, we left off discussing sacrifice through the lenses of sight, or humanity, and vision, or the divine. Humanity sees sacrifice as works, while the divine sees sacrifice as play. Humanity is wayward, and the divine is the compass. Carl Jung came to the conclusion that human beings, humanity, our human nature, is incapable of creating our own values, morals, and ethical structures. We can't just mold ourselves just any old way we want to be, even though we try, even though that's the endeavor of most of our adult lives. We have a nature that we have to contend with that's driving towards that end, but we also have a divine nature and a design that we have to contend with. And it will spring up out of you, and something will feel like I should be doing something different. There are things I ought to be doing that I'm not doing. There are things that I'm doing that I ought not to be doing. Right. The gospel is value, moral, and ethical structures that we need are all discoverable. We just have been looking in external places. The understanding is where you'll discover them is internally. It's within. Inster quilinus invenitur. It's a dark place inside yourself when you confront the reality of what you're capable of if pushed too far, if made too angry, if made too hungry, if made too hot or too cold. Murder, stealing, theft, larceny, petty larceny. A lot of these crimes, even in today's society, are driven by poverty, a lack of, in this material world. I see it every day. I encounter it all the time. There's a reason why I felt led to go into the public service arena. There are those that need competent people that care not just about clearing a file off the desk and drawing a paycheck, but they care about rehabilitation. There's an outcome and a consequence for the acts and deeds you perform in this world. But there is a God that can save you after the consequence is paid, while you're paying the consequence, or before the consequence ever takes effect. As a strength, as a comforter, as a shield and buckler. We're going to get into that a little bit more. The thing you need the most, Inster quilinus invenitur, the thing you need the most is in the last place you want to look for it, which is the cesspool of your soul. Because as much as light abounds within us, darkness does as much abound. It is a temptation. It's why Christ was tempted in all points without missing the mark. It doesn't mean that He didn't do things that the religious institutions thought were sin by their definition. The moral and ethical structures created by man, which, as we just discussed by Carl Jung, that's impossible to do. God sets the ethical and moral structures. And that is an individual process, because each and every one of us are unique and special, fearfully and wonderfully made. So the things that God is going to deal with me on a moral and ethical basis will not be the same things that He deals with you on. Or maybe they will. Guess who's going to know? Only God knows. Only you know once you start to go within. As the needs continue to rise for these moral and ethical structures, as you continue to debate within yourself on what you ought to do and what you ought not to do, how to set your world right, how to move from sight to vision, out of humanity into divinity, being in this world while not of this world. Confrontation with the unknown and venturing into those deep, dark, undesirable places will lead to discovery, illumination, and the revelation that we need to see the world as divine beings, the foals of man. You make the right sacrifices and you will thrive. It's play, and you're playing your part. Avoiding sacrifices is in no way a path to enlightenment, aiming at oneness with God. Let me repeat that. Because I, at 17, in my religious upbringing, in reading the story of Zedekiah from Jeremiah, got from that obedience is better than sacrifice. We can avoid sacrifice altogether. Not true. Immature. Hadn't lived long enough yet. Hadn't experienced enough suffering and pain yet. I hadn't left my father's house yet and ventured down into Egypt in search of the pearl of great price yet. I had no idea what that was. I thought it was an actual pearl.
God, that's good.
I thought it was actual treasure. I thought it was something of material value, something of material worth. What I would find is that it's not of any material worth or any material value, because it far supersedes the value that you can find in this material world. Mm. We are to bring forth olive oil so that our candles may burn forever. This requires the whole olive of the soul being smashed and crushed and the oil bled that fills the cup. Avoiding sacrifice is the refusal to do what's meaningful and is a further derivative choice, which means it's a cyclical choice. Human beings have been making this choice for all time. It's a derivative choice to live in expediency, to live for the moment. YOLO, you only live once. Wrong. As we said Wednesday, YODO is more true. You only die once. You live every day. How are you living? What are you living for? Who are you living for? Why are you living in this time, the when you're here? Because we know we don't stay here. We know we didn't begin here. We know we were placed here. And we know we are leaving here. That is an eternal cosmic conversation. It far surpasses anything the material world has an answer for. So why are we looking for earthly and material treasures? It's instant gratification. And it's not a new temptation for mankind that keeps its instant gratification. And it's not a new temptation. This is how mankind keeps God under wraps and play at bay. There is no spirit, no life, no joy. There's only foolishness, folly, and frivolity. Matthew 25 verses 1 through 12 would tell us that the foolish had no oil for their candles, and thus the bridegroom could not recognize them. He did not know them. Matthew 7, 21 through 23 says, it tells us that He tells them to depart from me, that they have become workers of iniquity, producing transgressors of the law. Well, what does that mean? These workers of iniquity, they're producing transgressors of the law. They're creating rules and structures themselves that are condemning other sons and daughters of God. They're shackling them and they're jailing them with their religious belief structures. They're shackling them and imprisoning them with their religious belief structures, their own ethical and moral choices they've decided to make, and credit God for it when God's not in it at all. If God were in it, explain John 3:17 to me. If you're producing transgressors of the law, explain to me how the incarnation came not to condemn, not to imprison, not to shackle, but that all would be saved, free to be who they are, free from the constraints of this material world. Religion oftentimes takes the material world and adds more constraints. Add more chains and weights, more bondage that you have to work through to earn the right to say, you're a good person. You're a good Christian. You're a good Baptist, or whatever the case may be. I'd rather be a good God. I'd rather be a good child of God. I'd rather be something else entirely than what this world has come up with and given labels to. I'd rather them see me and they have no choice but to say something about that is God. I don't have all the answers for it, but something about that resonates that is God and God is in it. I'd rather be indescribable with no reputation and no label, displaying the divinity of God like a light set upon a hill. Now, I want to get back into, and this is unplanned. I had a direction that I was going with this idea, and I got back into Proverbs 8, and I went back all the way to verse 1, and I said, all of this is good. I'd kind of like to talk about that. I'd kind of like to get into this a little bit. Now, the title that's given to this chapter is the blessings of wisdom. And before we get into the chapter, I'd like to lay a little bit of groundwork in some Gnosticism. So if you don't mind, each of you go into your purse or in your coat pocket, pull out your Gnostic glasses, put those on with me, because we're going to read this chapter through a different lens than we've ever read it before. And I think it's the right lens to read it through because it reveals another aspect of the sacred. It reveals another side of the absolute. It lets us know Him more, know her more, know God more. Everybody have their glasses on? All right, let's take a look. The commentary for this chapter began by saying, it is a bewitching picture of wisdom as a noble matron. Okay. Well, it doesn't sound too bad. That sounds pretty good. Maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe it's more than bewitching. Now, when you read this, well, let me start here. In some Gnostic beliefs, Sophia, meaning wisdom, is revered as both divine creator and female counterpart to Jesus Christ. Everybody okay? Yeah. Still got our glasses on? Good. This belief was centered around the conceptualization that Christ had two aspects. A male half that identified as the Son of God, and a female half who was then venerated as the mother of the universe. The Savior of the world and the mother of the universe. These are the two parts of what the Christ was in this belief structure. And I'm not pushing anyone to believe it. I'm just giving you the information. Where you find God in it is entirely up to you. I know where I found God in it, and I hope to show you that today. For a much less logical leap, though, in identifying the beauty in the feminine represented here in this text, in Proverbs 8, I like to take from the Apocryphon of John, which was written around circa 180. Sophia, according to this book, according to the author, the writer, attributed to John, is represented as divine wisdom and the female spirit that is obviously an aspect of the sacred. So we don't get into splitting Jesus into two parts with this book, with this Gnostic text, because different Gnostics within Gnosticism believe things at different degrees. Because remember, Gnosticism is predicated on the notion that it is individual esoteric information that gives you your pathway back to God. So when you got some information, you would write that in a book. If it's different from everybody else, it's just because they don't know. And I'm a Gnostic, and I know and they don't know, because God told me and He didn't tell them. So believe it. It's a little tough. That's why we have to read everything in context. That's why we can't just read the Gnostic Gospels. We need the Synaptic Gospels. We need the other works. We need the other civilizations. We need the other mythologies. We need all of the information to be able to actually ferret out what is God and what isn't. And then like water, we take with us what is God, and we leave the rest discarded on the shore. We don't bring that with us. Okay? So it's grains of salt. Salt bay this information for yourself. Okay? Further, in the Gnostic creation story, Sophia is worshipped as the mother of creation. From the sun she creates, that is seen or depicted as having the head of a lion and the body of a serpent, who uses her power of creation to create our material world. So we're all over the place. So once again, though, let's extrapolate out what we can from the information. All right? Because we've said some things. It seems a little crazy. What are we really looking at? And when we read these things, what are we really pulling out? Well, once again, the theme is that the masculine and feminine are present in the beginning. And they would give way to an offspring that would create the material world. Mesopotamia, the Babylon mythos have Tiamat, the primordial sea, the feminine, the chaotic waters, the salt water, and Absu, the father, who is groundwater, who represents order, and they give way to the offspring, Marduk, that then becomes the example for what kings should be, what a good pharaoh would be. Sumerian creation mythos has Namu, which is the primeval waters, who she gives birth to Kai, earth, and On, the sky. And they have a son, Enlil, who separated heaven from earth and claimed earth at his domain. In the Egyptian mythos, Ra was both masculine and feminine as God. Sounds familiar. Creates from himself. I wish you could hear what our bishop does while we're doing this. For those of you listening, you don't get the benefit of this. If you come in person, you'll get to hear a live heckler in the audience. And it's not always bad heckles, so don't take offense. But you get heckled up here. It's a great day. But Ra, who the Egyptians saw as the ultimate God, or the God that was both masculine and feminine, he was the absolute that we would consider God to be, creates from himself Shu, which is the air, or the dryness god, and Ternut, which is humidity, which is a humidity goddess, who then procreate and have other gods to complete the cosmos, like Jeb, which was the earth, and Nut, which was the sky goddess. And then we have, of course, Abba, Ima, and Amy. Father, mother, son, masculine, feminine offspring, Father, Spirit, Son, in the Hebrew tradition. So what are we seeing? Over and over and over again, you can't have masculine without feminine. And without the masculine and the feminine coming into unity, we don't have any offspring that create our world. The children are the future. It is what the world is made of. And it takes a masculine and a feminine to produce it. So regardless of how far out there you think the information is, or how crazy you think I'm getting with texts, what are we extrapolating out from that is common, that reveals God? I believe that would be a universal truth that we see not only echoed in the Scripture, in the text, be fruitful and multiply, Adam and Eve and their children, but in our everyday lives. When men and women come together and produce children, the lineage of their lives continues. It carries on. It builds into something or devolves into nothing. We always talk about it in terms of a positive thing. Sometimes it's not so positive. Sometimes it's not good. Sometimes people have a raw deal, a raw shake. Things don't go the way they're supposed to go. How much more so for those of us that did have that echo in the material world? Should we be bending over backwards to serve those people who in the material world have no frame of reference for what we're talking about?
That's so good.
They didn't have a mom or a dad. They grew up in foster homes.
Yeah.
Or those that can't have children, biological issues. They don't get to experience the understanding of this golden echo in this life, in this material world. That is why it is valuable that each and every one of you that have, share. Use your words, the Logos given to you, and create for them a picture or an image that could set them free. Because they don't have one in this world. They don't have anything to look back on and think, that's what that means. That's who God was to me. God was my mother in that moment. God was my father in that moment. God was a child in that moment. You don't know. You don't know who you're talking to or what they've been through until you talk to them about what they've been through. And that's going to be a sacrifice of your time, your energy, your emotion, your life. But it's one worth sacrificing. I say all that to say that what I'm going to read from this chapter is so much more than just a delightful picture of a noble matron. See, I remember reading a few chapters back in chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, that it's the Lord that gives wisdom, that out of God's mouth comes knowledge and understanding, that God lays up sound wisdom for the righteous, that God is the buckler to those that God is the buckler to make you walk uprightly, that God keeps the path of judgment, and God preserves the way of saints. See, when I read it, I see a God who will be in your corner for the fight ahead and life's suffering. And then in chapter 8, I see a God to come back to the tent. He gives prudent counsel and rest and strength for the fight and suffering that follow. I see a God that wars against the beast with you, and then a God that teaches you to ride and use the beast's power as your own. I see strength in the God I play with and strength in the God I pray with. Masculine strength and feminine strength aren't the same thing. And we know the source of that strength is. It comes from the same place. It's one source. It's the absolute that provides whatever strength is necessary. And I believe we see that demonstrated in this chapter. Can we read it? I don't want to read too much, but at the same time, I think it's worth it. Proverbs 8, beginning in verse 1. Does not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She stands in the top of high places, and by the way in the places of the paths. She cries at the gates, at the entry of the city, and at the coming in at the doors. Jeremiah told us to seek out the ancient gates. I believe wisdom gives you the information you need as you approach those gates to walk in and start making something happen. And Christ said He is the door. It's a consideration. Unto you, O mortals, from the Hebrew word enosh, I call, and my voice is to the foals of Adam. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. I want to break this out a little bit. The word simple here, O ye simple, you simpletons, it doesn't mean what you think it means. Don't throw eggs and lettuce yet. Or tomatoes. It means be open. Those that make themselves roomy, that make room within themselves. So when you're being simple, when you're breaking things down, when you're extrapolating out the information that matters, and not getting caught in the weeds of the details, and the weirdness or the mysticism or the magic or whatever the case may be, what you find is that you're open. Okay, let me step back from that. Let me simplify this. Am I open to seeing God? Am I open to understand wisdom? Or what the word would be described as from orma, discretion, subtlety, prudence. Or will you be a fool? Meaning silly. Now that one does mean silly. Silly and fat. It means those who have or show a lack of common sense or judgment, they do the absurd with the information that they have. Why? They're wayward. Why? Their human nature is ruling over them. Because if their divine was ruling over them, they would have direction because they would be living as a compass. Then heart. Fools, be ye of an understanding heart. So you silly people, you absurd folks who do all the wrong things with all the right information, at least be of an understanding heart, which means open your feelings, your will, and your intellect. The very center of you needs to understand this is not good for you. It would be better for you to be simple, to be open to the truth God has for you. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understands, and right to them that find knowledge. Verse 10, receive my instruction and not silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. Now, the word choice here comes from the word bakar, and they chose to use the word choice instead of choose. So it's not choice meaning it's the best, or it's the finest, or it's the purest. It's just the gold you choose. It's just what you picked out. It's what you sought after. It's what caught your eye. It's fool's gold in the material world. In the divine, we're looking for foal's gold. Verse 11, for wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. Now, let me read that again. We're reading this in the feminine context. God in the feminine aspect, and God says, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. Does that not give anyone else Proverbs 31 woman vibes? No? Well, I got a few over here. Because they always find out your witty inventions. Females are always too good at that. You can't pull the wool over their eyes for too long. They're going to discover what's going on. Why? They dwell with prudence. They live in discretion. They're constantly going through the details and the minutia. Well, so is God, apparently. And maybe you get that from God. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the torturous or contrary mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. By me kings reign and princes decree justice. By me princes rule and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me. We love them because they first loved us. And those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. Verse 19, my fruit is better than fool's gold, yea, more than fine fool's gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance. Now, when you wed together the two words of substance and inherit, the word haya means to exist, to be, to come to pass. So that I may cause those that love me to be who they are. Not just remember, but be who you are. The I am makes you the I am. If you love Him and are one with Him, you're as much the I am as He is. And I will fill their treasures. I didn't like it. We got all of this work, everything that comes up, you inherit substance, and then fill treasures? I thought that was strange. Well, what treasures do I need if you're filling me with substance? I'm now who I really am. I am being who I was designed to be. Well, treasures is from the word otsar, or otsah, which is simply a storehouse. So I will fill your storehouses. You'll want for nothing. Give no thought for tomorrow, for the things of tomorrow will take care of themselves. Behold, my sufficiency is of God. If I would dress the lilies, how much more would I clothe you? We can go on and on and on and on of the provisions of God and how He provides for His children. The idea here is that you'll be yourself. And when you are yourself, you'll have want of nothing. You'll have abundance. In every area, you have a storehouse to fill. That's a promise. That's not prosperity preaching either. Because it's going to be a tough path to get there. But if we're looking at it right, if we have vision, we don't have to see it as work. We can live it as play. We can substitute the search of fool's gold to provide for the things of this world and find the foal's gold that makes the things of this world not a thought at all. That's all abundant. God's filled my storehouses. I don't need to search for that another day. I don't need to walk that path another mile. It's done. The Bible is chock full of these references too. There's the tithing chapter in Micah. God's storehouses full of rain. God's storehouses full of the depths of the ocean. His storehouse full of snow. His storehouse full of hail. His storehouse full of wind. Try that again. Jeez. Sleep deprived. Told you. Starting to show. Caffeine's wearing off. What will our storehouses be filled with? Greater works is what Christ told us. And that continues to ring in my ears as I go through this information. But we'll have to get deeper into play to find out. So let's keep going. Romans 8, verse 17, to juxtapose that, throw that in the mix. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs of Christ, if so be that we suffer with Him, that we may also be glorified together. That's a full storehouse. That's the I am. That's being who you really are. And no longer worrying about what you look like in the bathroom mirror. Or what bathroom mirror you're looking into. That might get uncomfortable for some of us. Let's go back to Proverbs 8, verse 22. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of His way, before His works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains abounding with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet He had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When He prepared the heavens, I was there. When He set a compass upon the face of the depth, when He established the clouds above, when He strengthened the fountains of the deep, when He gave to the sea His decree that waters should not pass His commandment, when He appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was by Him, as one brought up with Him, and I was daily His delight, rejoicing always before Him, rejoicing in the habitable part of the earth, and my delights were the foals of men. Foalosophy. It's the study of the fundamental nature of constantly uncovering belonging in its purest form. Childlike, creative play. Creator cannot be separated from creation. Creation is made up from the Creator's raw primordial materials. Creator is thus both the creation and the created. Anybody getting some Krishna vibes?
Yes.
That you are the entirety of the universe. And the universe is the entirety of you. And the universe is the entirety of God, and God is the entirety of the universe. So then you are the entirety of God, or the fullness of God. And God is the fullness of you. Oneness. It's what we've taught. It's time we walk it. Everything created is the Creator. My, what a playground to be given life to manifest divine potential in. Foalosophy aims at addressing the epitome of foolishness to anthropos, which is mindless play. Rick Rubin said this: meaning is secondary to intuitive response. Sometimes mindless play can hold more power than meaning. B sent me that while he was over in Scotland feeling inspired. There's a difference in what is meaningful and what we merely attribute meaning to. Let me say that again. There is a difference in what is actually meaningful and what we merely attribute meaning to. In other words, there is divine meaning, and then there's the meaning man gives things. And that juxtaposition has to be contended with. In the context of art, an artist may be contracted to fulfill a commissioned piece, to pay the bills, to make do. That artist may also intuitively have fun creating unique pieces or private pieces that wind up being the real treasure of all their work. What I mean is that one is a very nice painting. The other reflects the artists themselves. One holds the meaning to function in society. The other holds the meaning of the universe, which is you. It's the artists themselves. It's a reflection of the universe because it's a reflection of who they are. And that's much more powerful than the meaningful painting that kept the lights on and the water running. That brings us back to the idea of sacrifice. Said all that to say this. That our obedience becomes sacrifice. That is the hero arc of the one who remembers who they are and now seeks to make the simple calculation, the one that makes room for all that God has for you, which is joy. A life where your humanity is your God is marked by being devoid of meaning and purpose. It's a fleeting thrill that leads to a burning hell for your life. However, a life devoted to God requires sacrifice because it brings with it all the meaning and purpose for your life's potential. It's eternally thrilling and satiates the soul. You see, God structured our reality to be bargained with by you and me. Behaving properly now, in the present, regulating our impulses, considering the plight of others, can and will bring reward in the future. Not abiding by this is to negatively impact and interfere with not your own life, not only, but the lives of others, their futures, and even more so, your future self. I've said this many times, but God did not come to save you from being yourself. He came to save you to be yourself. The self you've forgotten. Not the you that is reflected in the bathroom mirror, but the you within. The foal of anthropos. This child within you knows who they are and goes about their official business, as Jesus did at 12 years old. And reminded his mother when she questioned him about it. It's the child and the children who leads the way. It's the being within that is the compass for our lives and all we encounter. There's two archetypal questions that arise from such an understanding of sacrifice. Both have to do with the ultimate extension of the logic of work, which is to say, sacrifice now to get better later. That's how I'm framing the logic of work. That's how others like Dr. Jordan Peterson have framed it. I think it makes sense. The logic of work is work means sacrifice now and get something later. Right? I'm going to work 40 hours this week to get a paycheck at the end of the week. If we break down sacrifice that simply, we're open to whatever interpretation God wants to give us about that, aren't we? Now we've really psychologically taken sacrifice in the abstract, and we can apply it across a myriad of planes of existence and understanding. It's not just a stone altar that you build and put an animal on and cut its throat and bleed it out and burn it and pray. We've gone from that to the understanding that sacrifice is highly modal across multiple planes, and that we have to engage in it in that modality across those multiple planes to truly be who we're supposed to be. I hope that makes sense. The first question we ask is, what must be sacrificed? Small sacrifices may solve small singular problems to improve the future. Larger, more complex sacrifices are often harder and less desirable to undertake, but they're often better because they can solve a vast array of bigger and more complex problems in the future. This is where the feminine voice of wisdom to remain simple is key. To discern and do what is prudent regarding the sacrifices you make and when you make them. It's important to know that information. Second question, what is implied by the logic of work and what are the limits? In other words, what are the largest, most effective, most pleasing, best possible sacrifices to make for the largest, most effective, most pleasing, best possible future? The most bang for our buck.
Right. There it is.
We're still making calculations like men.
Come on.
It's not the idea of sacrifice. It's man's idea of sacrifice. It's when you see sacrifice as that altar with that animal, draining its blood and burning it and praying, instead of taking that information within and making the sacrifices internally with yourself. Sacrificing within yourself what needs to be sacrificed, what's most prudent for you to let go of, for you to contend with, for you to sacrifice. Because we know that not all sacrifices are of equal quality. Furthermore, not all high-quality sacrifices are rewarded with a better future. We aren't clear as to why, which leads to a deeper dive within yourself. Again, retreat within yourself to uncover what God really wants from you. The foal of you. The foal's gold that's been hidden in this field of dust and clay and dirt. God requires sacrifice. He requires it. And typically, it's the sacrifice of the material thing one loves the best. At least that's the way the biblical stories lay it out. It's the choicest of your cattle. It's the best of your flock of sheep. It's your son with your wife, and not your son with the handmaiden. The son of promise. Gets real quick, just like life does. Why? The world is revealed to a large degree through what we value. That's how we understand the world. It's a valuation of all things, in all places, everywhere, all the time. Therefore, if the world you see is not the one you want or believe you should have, you must examine what you value. What are you looking at and what value are you attributing to it? Is it divinely meaningful to attribute that value? Or is that just the meaning you attribute to it and then have given value to it improperly? Therefore, if you sacrifice to it, you're not going to get the results you want from it. And that has nothing to do with God and everything to do with how you value things and what meaning you attribute to things. So maybe your bitterness and resentment is yours and yours alone. And God had nothing to do with it. It's time to rid yourself of your current presuppositions at that point. It's time to let go of what you think you know or have covered or handled. 1 Corinthians 8:2, and if any man thinks that he knows a thing, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. Karl Popper, like I said on Wednesday night, said the purpose of thinking is to let your thought die, not you. Werner Heisenberg said, only a few know how much one must know to know how little one knows.
Say it again.
Werner Heisenberg said, only a few know how much one must know to know how little one knows. It's a God thought. and other men have found it. Maybe through the Bible, maybe not. Given enough time, one comes to the conclusion that to sacrifice what they love most, which I posit to you today, is who they might become in this life, or who they think they should become in this life, or what they should do for a living in this life, or what all they should have ownership or control over in this life, or what status they should attain in this life. Essentially, the cares of this material world. The you that you see in the bathroom mirror, that's become the God to you. That's the God you've put before God. That's the first commandment. It's you and the material things that you value. Because if you were to truly value yourself as the divine being you were, you would see that the things of value of this material world will pass away. Why would I store those things up? My storehouse is meant for greater things. My God's storehouse harnesses the rain, the snow, the hail, the wind, the depths of the ocean. Why would I fill my storehouse with a bunch of fool's gold, rubies, jewels, diamonds, money, wealth of this world? I want to clear that out of my storehouses so I have more room for the elemental power and competence of God. That goes beyond the elements of this world, that breaks beyond the atomic structure and molecular structures of this material world, that is eternal. That's what I want in my storehouses. The child who grew up and learned the ways of this world and became part of it as an adult. The foal of you never aged. It never grew up. It's waiting for you to make the proper sacrifices of your existence to be who you really are, to be that foal. It's waiting for its awakening to be. And it's waiting on you to contend with your human nature. A proper sacrifice should be something intensely personal or painful to give up, which appears to be the message behind circumcision of the foreskin. And not just of the foreskin, but of the heart. And when we talk about the circumcising of the heart, that speaks to a part of the whole. And the question we need to answer is, what sacrifice speaks to the whole? So maybe there's a third archetypal question. Christ is the archetype for man who gives his all for the sake of the better. The man who offers up his life for the sake of being, who accepts God's will, not without hardship, not without pain, not without suffering, and then allows it to manifest fully within the confines of his single mortal life. That's the archetype we follow. If you want to be like Christ, that's what you got to make it look like. That's the world you have to see. Hard pill to swallow. It's a lot harder than the rules and regulations of dogmatic teachings and principles of denominations and churches. It's easier not to pick up a can of beer than it is to pick up your cross and go to Calvary. Let me say that again. It's easier not to pick up a beer or go to a nightclub than it is to pick up your cross and march up your hill to Calvary. It's not a game. We take it seriously. That's why we don't get wrapped up in that. Not sending anyone to hell over a can of beer. I care about whether you're carrying your cross. I care about whether you're being who you really are. Because the rules and the regulations are different for each and every one of us, and only God determines what those are. Because only God knows what darkness will tempt you within you. It's not externalized for everyone to see all the time. Sometimes it's in here and it stays in here our whole life. And some people die that way. And I don't want to encounter anyone that has to suffer that fate. What I want them to see is a shoulder to cry on or an ear to hear. Get that out and work that salvation out with the fear and trembling that it requires. Make the proper sacrifices. Christ sacrifices His mortality, unveiling that the material world will pass away and that pain and suffering define and shape the world we live in. What His sacrifice tells us about defining proper sacrifice is that it is something like the act of holding pain and suffering in abeyance, which is a temporary state of disuse or suspension. The person who wishes to alleviate suffering, rectify the flaws in being, bring the best of all possible futures about, and create heaven on earth will make the greatest of sacrifices of self and allow the child, the pearl of great price, the hidden treasure within, the foal, to be the compass they were designed to be, to direct through love a life aimed at the good. That being has heard the golden echo, the golden tone. They've recovered the foal's gold and will forego expediency to pursue the path of ultimate meaning, remembering they are the child of the absolute, sloughing off the look and appearance of the material world, recollecting themselves to return to their source, to return to their rightful place in the kingdom, as the fable of the pearl showed us. The wayward work of embarking on the journey to find the pearl will be a playful stroll back through the pain and suffering that once took its toll. And they bring salvation to an ever-desperate world, just as their elder brother did long ago through his illuminated play. Christ played his part. Judas played his part. We have our parts to play. Anthropos interprets sacrifice as an external works. It's the fool's gold. This is why the works become wayward and errant. They aren't reading their own internal compass. They base every choice on sight and lack vision, and thus they perish. As Francois du Toit so eloquently puts it, this is a works-based consciousness. Their doctrines and dogmas have colored their thoughts, that have colored their world, reducing their potential to have divine vision, and leaves them with mere sight alone. These colored thoughts, most of them, they're not even their own. As Carl Jung would say, it's difficult to think. That's why most people judge. There's a lot of judgment that comes from the church. A lot of condemnation from people unwilling to think about why they're thinking about things in the first place. For instance, let's think about this. God didn't clothe Adam and Eve in the garden because of some divine need to be appeased, even though that's what most churches think or judge from the story. Pardon me. God spoke the language of Anthropos' journey to remember who they are. The clothing was, I believe, another example of the divine feminine wisdom of God to prepare Anthropos for the unveiling of the compass of mankind's redemption in the incarnation that would be Jesus Christ, and others who lived a Christophany in their lifetime. 1 John 3:13 in the Mirror reads, "It's no wonder then that the performance-based religious systems of this world loathe you and detest what you stand for." That's okay. I'm cool with it. Loathe all you want. Detest all you want, because I'm getting more and more free. And the more and more free I get, the more and more all this looks like play. It's not work to me. It's not work to me to work out my salvation anymore. It's another adventure with God. It's another adventure with Dad.
Right.
We get to go into those dark woods, but He's right there with me. And He's never going to leave me. And He's never going to forsake me. And He's going to be with me always, even into the end of the eon. A works-based society finds its leverage in both boasting and condemnation. Romans 3:27 reads, "The law of faith cancels the law of works, which means there is suddenly nothing left for anyone to boast about, No one is superior to another. This means we're free to play on a level playing field. This is the illuminated play that frees us from the wayward works of the flesh, the wayward works of religious institutions. The divine interprets sacrifice as illuminated play. This is Foal's gold. This is why work becomes illuminated. This is why work becomes illuminated play, because they have the vision to read their inner compass and follow the will of God that is true north, the way, the truth, and the life. Being the star, the foal, the child, the luminary, you accept and voluntarily pursue what you're designed to do in a world designed to require it. Delaying gratification for a better future. It's how we reveal there is a God. It's how we reveal that we are God. One with our Creator, and our Creator one with us. It's how we gather more like us to the playground and we right our wrongs. The bargain of material power in exchange for divine competence that manifests heaven. Rick Rubin would also say this, and this is a great book, by the way. AJ got me a copy. He's taught from it before. The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. He calls us all artists, whether you're a musician or whether you create art or not. And I believe he's right. Because we're all part of the same game and the same play, and we all have our part to play. Our colors to add. Our doodles, our scribbles, our drawings, our words, our deeds, our actions. We all get a part in this play. He writes, making art is a serious matter. Harnessing creative energy from the source. Shepherding ideas into the physical plane. Participating in the cosmic cycle of creation. The opposite is also true. Making art is pure play. Now think about what he's saying. You're harnessing the creative energy from the source. Well, that's what we're teaching you that you can do. That's what Christ told us greater works would be. You're one with God. Well, you're harnessing the creative power from God to create with. So why are we not creating? Shepherding ideas into the physical plane. We've been taught from the Bible it's shepherding people into the doors of the church. Instead of shepherding the ideas of God into the material world and the physical planes that we necessarily have to sacrifice in. Connect these dots. See, I know you guys are. They won't shut up over there. Which means I must be doing something right, Jack. I must be on a roll today. They're participating in the cosmic cycle of creation. We're being fruitful. We're multiplying. More and more instances in children are given birth to and life, and God has been placed within them to reveal more of God to us. We now have 8 billion ways to see God. The opposite is also true. All of this is pure play. When you have divine vision exchanged for mortal sight. He would go on to describe us all as artists, as I said. And that we all have children inside, I love this, all have children inside of us searching for the right crayon in the box to color our worlds with. And children, most oftentimes, begin with the sky. Take up your crayons and follow me, says the bishop. He's got a box. It's 64. Crayola. It's the big yellow box. It's nice. Now the sky, if I can just go off on a little tangent right here, because this just melts my noodle when I come across stuff like this. The sky, as different mythologies would suggest, would be considered the realm of the gods. So while all of these children are searching for the perfect crayon to color their sky with, the first thing they're focusing on, all of mythology and civilization would give us, well, the first thing they're wanting to do is color the realm of the gods. As if they know that or they've been there before. Wow.
it.
Maybe that's just the way I think about it, but I like the way I think about it. In John 10:34, Christ replies to the religious stoning squad by referencing Psalm 82. If we are God's, then wouldn't they be coloring their own realm? Wouldn't that be what these children are doing? If Christ is telling the Pharisees and the religious stoning squad, don't you remember Psalm 82? We're all God's. And these children are finding the right crayon to color their world with. They're telling you who they are with the first crayon they pick up out of the box and color with. Then his ministry, Christ's ministry, would further demonstrate this truth, that the realm of God's is here in this time. John 10:30, Christ and the Father are one. Elohim, Emmanuel. The counsel of God's is with us here. It's who we are. We've never left. We've never gone anywhere. Only this body in this material world has aged. We are eternal beings. And Christ demonstrated to all of us, what are you waiting for? You're all already here. I know what you're waiting for. Let me make the proper sacrifice and show you. Let me show you the way, the truth, and the life through the incarnation. The incarnated, co-seated revolution of our true identities and our oneness with God, all people, and all things was revealed through Christ. It's an all-inclusive work. The work that goes into coloring this world and illustrating the parts of the kingdom given to you is a burden we were designed to bear. The yoke is easy. The burden is light, because with vision, it's play. So if we choose to toss aside our baser instincts, predicated on caution, given the importance of our work, and break free from those material world cares into divine, mindless, pure play, then we are free to operate in all forms of the creative, divine, potential energy living within us all. John 14:12, greater works. John 14:12, greater works, greater works, greater works, greater works, greater works, greater works. Anthropos' foolishness is believing himself power enough to see sacrifice as works in order to earn gold for more power. We know how these stories end. We've seen Gilgamesh. We've discussed the Tower of Babel and Nimrod. We've discussed Noah's fall after the flood. We've seen kingdom come and kingdom fall time and time and time again, and the gold was never enough to save them. It's fool's gold. Treasures of this world. It's a foolish endeavor to pursue. The children's wisdom is believing that their alignment with the sacred gives them the competent vision to engage sacrifice as play, to competently reveal that the gold has been, is, and always will be each and every one of us, that God is love, and in His loving way has crafted quite the love story for each one of us. Each of us, regardless of this material world's reality or biological differences, are made in the image of God, hidden in the fields of this material world, golden echoes from a time outside of time, revealed in the foal's gold of man. The endeavor to serve God and man, to lay up treasures on earth and at the same time be rich in God, is quite the spiritual leap, one that doesn't really exist. Quote, treasures on earth. Well, that's just fool's gold. We are the treasure. We are the foal's gold. I'll end with this. John Bunyan told a story. He told a story of a man named Mr. Facing Both Ways. In all of his life, he kept one eye on one thing and one eye on another thing. Mr. Two-Faced Ways. One eye on heaven, one eye on earth. Sometimes one eye on hell. He didn't know where he was going to wind up. Why did he know where he was going to wind up? Because he would sincerely profess one thing and then sincerely do another. Every time. In the end, he gets caught up with the wrong folks. He's got the wrong two people he's dealing with. He's got one eye on God and one eye on the devil. Or his own darkness. Wink. And in the end, in trying to cheat God and the devil, he only cheats himself and his neighbors. It's never just about you. That's why it's worth it to do this. That's why it's worth it to make the proper sacrifices, because it's not just you. It's never just you. Ever. You don't know whose life you have an impact on. Even if you feel insignificant, if you feel irrelevant. Need more coffee? If you feel weak, if you feel like you can't say the right things or you don't know the right things to say, if you feel like you make no impact at all, that's never true. It's never a fact. It's your feelings. So it's time for you to realize what you value and what you don't value. And go within yourself in that thought process and contend with it. Because you should value yourself enough to know it's never just about you. And your life does impact others. So you should do what you ought to do. Don't live your lives as fool's gold when you were designed to live and be the real McCoy. Bona fide fool's gold. A star and a compass of and from the absolute. Thank you all again for tuning in today. I hope you've gotten something out of this message. Remember to like, share your comments in the comment stream, make friends in the comments. There's a lot of foals in there that need some more foals to play with on the playground. And download our app, The Gathering Echo. There you can give your donations, you can make your tithes there, and you can also catch all of our content from any of the streaming sources that are available in today's current state of multiple platforms. We thank you and we appreciate you. And if you'll say with us, we love them because they first loved us. Thank you. God bless you. See you on Wednesday night.